Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes. We're with Dr. Cyclone, who has about a 500,000 XP to go to get to the next level, and we're doing the Path of the Dark, I believe. Yep, for Colleen. Gathering as many allies as you can. This is the evil seed, right? The seed of darkness, shadow seed. We should be alright. I don't think I've ever needed multiple people to do this. I might need multiple cuts at the mission, depending on, what inspirations I have at the time we show up. But his character is pretty self-sufficient. There's lots of AoEs, and his defenses are pretty good. So we'll just go ahead and try it. And today, as we do the Path of the Dark, we're going to talk about respecs and whether GMs do and should allow their players to do respecs with their characters. So first, let's define what we mean by a respec. A lot of people, the word is written respec, not respect. It's not respect, right? It stands for respecification. You're rewriting your character. You're respecifying it. It was specified one way, and now you're going to respecify it. There's the Terra Volta trial in City of Heroes was originally the first way, the only way you could respec your character, meaning move these slots around. If I decide I don't want this to be 6 slotted, but I want this to be 6 slotted, I could move that around with a respec of my character. They then started allowing respecs later in City of Heroes when they made an update to the game that dramatically changed how the characters would work. Like if they did something to massively nerf a power or to change the way the enhancements worked on that power or something like that, in recognition of the fact that you'd built a character one way under one set of rules and now they've changed the rules, right? They've changed the way the game works. They would give you a free respecification, which came to be called, I'll type it when it comes in here, a free spec, sometimes spelled without the dash, right? A free respecification. So what this person on the D&D Beyond forum asked was of the DMs, they were talking for D&D, but we're going to talk about various role-playing games. Do you allow respecs, and if so, what do you allow? So the GMs that responded, in Dungeons and Dragons, you have attributes which are the sort of physical characteristics of your character, such as strength, dexterity, intelligence, constitution. You have skill proficiencies, which are not really skills, but they're kind of like skills. The way D&D does it is very weird. But those skill proficiencies are in things like nature and survival and healing and religion and things like that, and stealth and blah blah blah. And so those are skills. These are kind of like things that you can learn, right? Then you have feats, which are sort of special abilities that your character can have, like maybe that you get a free extra attack if the enemy casts a spell in front of you or something like that, and you're in melee range or something like that. And then you have obviously spells, right? And so these are things, and many times these are things that you kind of pick once and then you keep them forever. So when you get a feat in D&D, you keep that feat for the rest of your character. Right? So there's no mechanism in the game within the rules that allows you to drop a feat. Like if you took a feat at level 4, there's no mechanism that lets you drop that feat at level 6 or 8 and take a different feat instead. If you once you make your strength 16, there's no mechanism to swap that 16 strength for a 16 constitution in the rules. Right? Now GMs can allow it, but there's no mechanism for doing that. And so that's why this player was asking, well, what would the GMs allow? So some GMs said they would only allow changes to skills. Some said they would allow changes to skills and attributes. Some said allow you to change your class. Some said not your class, but your subclass, and things like that. So before I say anything, if any of you are game masters, and by the way, I think the reason it said you're supposed to have multiple PCs in here is because there are going to be multiple bosses, and I guess they figured that would be hard, but we don't have trouble with purple bosses, so it should be fine. So before I give what my answer is of what circumstances, if any, I would allow a respec under, I want you guys to think about it. If you're a player, would you have you frequently ask for respecs? Is it something you do a lot or just a little bit? Is it something you'd only do under, like, what are the circumstances under which you would ask for a respec of your character, a redo, and what things would you find it reasonable to ask? The whole character, class, race, background, feats, skills, just things like skills and spells, subclass but not class. Like, so pause the video and maybe jot down and definitely give us comments too, in the comments of what you decided. What would you what do you think should be allowed for you? What are the things you would ask for? Are there limits to what you would ask for from the GM or not? And what are those limits and why? The second perspective to think about this from, if you are someone who sometimes game masters, have you allowed respecs, and under what conditions would you allow them? What elements would you allow to be respect? Are there certain limitations, and what would those limitations be? Is it a free-for-all? Anybody wants to make changes, as long as it's game legal. What you turn it into something that's game legal, it's okay. Like, what would your decision be? So, part one is, as a player, what kinds of things would you be likely to ask for, or have you asked for? What do you think is reasonable to ask for in a respec, if anything? And then as a GM, what would you tend to allow in a respec, if anything? And yeah, let us know what you think, and we'll be able to compare to what I say about this. Now, one thing I'm going to mention is I'm going to stop a bunch of times because I wrote down some notes. I have a lot to say about this. I am going to partition this across 3 different games: Dungeons and Dragons, Savage Worlds, and Champions. But I want to preface it by saying that ordinarily, both as a player and as a game master, I hate respecs. Because, as you may know from what we've talked about here on this channel in the past, I'm pretty much a continuity hound. I like the continuity to make sense. I like everything to be logical. Let me give you a great example that has nothing to do with role-playing games. It's from a TV show. The TV show The Big Bang Theory. I liked the first few seasons of it. I stopped liking it after about season 5 because I felt like it had gone from a TV show about nerds to basically Friends. 3 guys, 3 girls, they were all dating each other, and it was all about romance and relationships instead of being about nerd stuff. They still did some nerd things, but not as many as they used to, and I stopped liking it and I stopped watching it. But I do like the first few seasons. And so in the 4th season, Howard, the engineer, starts dating a young woman named Bernadette, who's a biology graduate student, and played by Melissa Rauch. And Sheldon, who is the main character, is this sort of obsessive-compulsive, very nerdy scientist, and sometimes he acts a little bit kind of like a kid. And so there's an episode where Sheldon is obsessing over why carbon atoms move through a graphene sheet as if they have no mass, and he's trying to figure out why this is. And Leonard, who is Sheldon's roommate, goes out with Penny, who's the neighbor across the way, and Howard and Bernadette, and they go skating. And on the way back, they come into the apartment, and Sheldon's made a mess out of the apartment with marbles all over the place because he's trying to figure this out, and he hasn't slept in a couple of days, and he's overtired, and they can't make him go to bed. And Bernadette, who doesn't know him all that well, starts treating him like a child and says, "You're going to go to bed." And so she starts doing the count 1, 2, and he goes, "Okay," and he goes to bed. And Leonard, his roommate, says, "Wow, that was great the way you handled him." And she said, "My mother used to run an illegal daycare in my in our basement. I know how to handle difficult children." Okay. Half a season later, in the beginning of season 5, Howard, now her fiance, is doing a magic show for his cousin's children at a birthday party. And Bernadette, the same character, says, "I just don't like being around children. I've never been able to deal with them." Right? And what she says is, "My mother worked all day, and I was the oldest kid, and I had to take care of all my brothers and sisters." What do you mean your mother worked all day? You just told us 6 months ago that your mother ran an illegal daycare center in your basement and you're really good at handling children. Right? Now, my point about this is it just completely breaks continuity. And so, to me, if I were a writer, I would hopefully remember that. It always irritates me on a sitcom that there's a writer's room of like 6 people writing these episodes on a rotating schedule, and nobody notices that, hey, you just broke the continuity of the episode I wrote 6 months ago. It just, that kind of thing irritates me. So I don't like it on a TV show, and I don't like it at all in a role-playing game. So if you're going to do something that's respecking your character in a way that breaks the continuity of the in-game world, the story we're co-creating, right? I'm not talking about changing a +1 to a -1. That's not what I mean. But if you completely change your subclass from a war cleric to a peace cleric, and all of the role play that you did for 3 or 4 adventures about being a warrior is supposed to now be retconned, right? If a respec includes a retcon, I don't like that, because I don't like retcons. I want the continuity to be continuous, and I don't like it when you break continuity like that. I think it's sloppy on a TV show, and I don't think we should do it in our role-playing games. Right? It's sloppy in novels and so forth. And so, so one of the things that I look at if somebody's asking for some kind of a respec is it going to involve a retcon of play at the table and of our world or our story, right? If you decide that you want Legolas to go from being an elven archer to being a halfling thief 6 levels into the campaign, I'm going to have an issue with that. I would say you can have Legolas leave and make up a new character, but if you're trying to ask the other players at the table to roleplay as if Legolas was always a halfling thief instead of an elven archer, I'm going to have a problem with that, both as a player and as a GM, because that's now rewriting the stories we've already told. So one of the things I would look at for a respec is it going to be rewriting the stories we've already told? Here in City of Heroes, I respect my very first martial arts super reflex character because I had put 2 slots on combat jumping, and then I realized they were a waste of slots. And those slots were burning a hole in my pocket for like 30 levels until finally, around level 30, we were able to do the Terra Volta trial, and I was able to respec out of those slots and move them to another slot, to another spot. If I move 2 slots off of here and put them over here, it's not going to change any of the roleplay or continuity of this character. I was on a roleplay guild, and none of the stories we did changed because my character had 2 fewer slots of combat jumping. Okay, so I don't mind that kind of a respec because it's fairly trivial, and it also doesn't change anything about the narrative that we've been telling as a group all along. So one of the questions I always have is, will it change the story and require a retcon? I don't like retcons. Sometimes you have to do them, but I hate retcons, and I don't like continuity breaks, right? So in order to for me to permit a respec, let's see, respec requirements. Number 1, it must not require a retcon of continuity or a break of continuity. If it's going to change the continuity, I probably would not want to allow it as a GM. Okay, that's the first thing. So you're going to need to arrange it in such a way that it's not going to break continuity. The second thing that I'm going to ask is this a power game move? Are you doing this to try and become more powerful than you used to be because you want to be the most powerful guy at the table? If you're going to do that, if you're going to power game, I'm going to say no. Because I don't like power gaming. Right? So if somebody's trying to be a Munchkin or a power gamer and get too much power and make themselves, particularly if they're trying to do something like make themselves the most powerful character at the table, I will say no. Because I don't like that. Right? I want players to pick things for their character that are in character. They don't have to be inefficient, and it's okay for some in character things to be also efficient. This character has lots of efficient stuff, right? But it's also in character that he's got these lightning storms and wind and hurricanes and stuff like that because he's Dr. Cyclone, right? And so it should be in character, it shouldn't break continuity, and it should not be a power gaming move. If it's going to be for power gaming, I'm not going to like it, and I might say no. I probably will say no. Right? So those are kind of the guiding principles behind my decision. So now let's talk about the specific games. Let's start with Dungeons and Dragons. Right? So I feel like things that you're locked into for the sake of continuity and not retconning things are going to have to be your race and your class minimally, or whatever they call it now, species, ancestry. Class and race, you can't change those. If you don't like those, you need to make up a new character. Now, the rule I had, other than those things, in 5th edition when we played, was that I allowed respecs of other things, like including even your subclass, and if necessary, when you change your subclass, you could change things like spells and feats and such to fit. I allowed respecs up to the level of the subclass, and anything lower than that, up through level 4. Okay, my logic with this is we were all new to 5th edition. I don't know if I would do that again, but when we played, it was the first time any of us, including me, had played 5th edition. And we didn't. And several people had been watching Critical Role and reading the rule books, but I don't think any of them had played it, right? So, and the new girl definitely hadn't. And so, since most of us hadn't played much or any at all of 5th edition D&D, it was highly likely that people could pick a subclass that they didn't realize they weren't going to like, or they could pick a subclass that sounds really good, but then when you go to play it, it doesn't play anything like you imagine. So let's say you pick, I don't know, a Shadow Monk, and you think you're going to be a really cool assassin, and then you find out that even though it says you can do that in the rules, the way the rules work, it really doesn't make you as good an assassin as you thought, and you're just like, forget it, I don't want to do that. Or it gives you some abilities. Like, say you're a ranger and you think you want to be a beastmaster, and then after you screw around with the pet for a while, you're like, you want to know what? The pet's a little bit of extra overhead that I don't really want to deal with. Can I just be like a hunter or something? Okay, So what I said was, most classes pick their subclass at level either 2 or 3, usually 3. I don't know what it is now in the new version, but in the 2014 5th edition version that we played, most people picked their subclass at level 3, although a few people picked it earlier. And so what I figured was, okay, you're going to pick your subclass at level 3. You pick it at the start of level 3, and you have the entirety of level 3, which is going to be several sessions, to try this subclass out. And if you like it or don't like it, you should know that by the time we hit level 4. So what I said to them was, at level 4, you can change your subclass. Or before level 4, if you decide in the middle of level 3 that you hate it, you can just change it. No questions asked, no harm, no foul. After level 4, if you don't change it at that point, you're locked in. Like, once you hit level 5, there are no more changes. And I said, by then you should have figured out if you like this subclass or not, right? And I would allow any changes to things like skills, feats, and spells, and even moving around attributes as necessary to fit the subclass you ultimately picked, right? So, for example, with a rogue, there's a magical version called the Eldritch. What is it? The Arcane Trickster, right? And the Arcane Trickster is going to need a higher intelligence because of the magical spells than, say, an Assassin Rogue or a Thief Rogue. And if that's true, oh, boss over there, let's sweep the room. Then if you purposely got yourself a high intelligence because you thought you were going to like being an Arcane Trickster, and then after playing it for a while you decided you hated it and you'd rather be a Thief, and you need more, I don't know, Constitution or something instead of Intelligence to be a Thief, I'd let you swap them around, right? It's not normally done in D&D, but because you decided you didn't like the subclass after trying it, I'm okay with that. Now, there may be some retconning in this because you were casting spells and suddenly you can't, but it probably won't be too massive, and I told them at the outset that this would be okay, right? So this was a rule we established, which was that you get to try your subclass out for a level, and if you don't like it, you can change it. No questions asked. And we'll just edit in our heads the couple of spells you cast and pretend you were using potions or something instead. It's a bit of a retcon, it's a bit of a continuity break, but I felt like that was reasonable. It gives you it because we didn't know what 5th edition was going to play like, and it was always possible that something that you thought would be cool turns out not to be so great, or just not as fun as you thought it would be, right? So that's the logic of that. Now for Savage Worlds, my rule has always been that you can change your current advance, right? So Savage Worlds is essentially a level-based game, but it's free-form. They don't call them levels, they call them advances. It's just another word. Every time you level up, you get a single choice. You can move up an attribute or or 2 skills, gain an edge, or buy off a hindrance, right? And so it's a little more complicated than that, but an edge is like a feat or a talent or something, or you can get 2 new powers or what have you, or 1 new power. I don't remember. You get new powers or more power points. So let's say you pick an edge that you think. Oh, forgot about this guy. Let's say you pick an edge that you think is really cool, and then after you play it for a while, you go, you know what? This edge is nowhere near as useful. I thought it would show up a lot. I thought it would happen at least a couple times a session. And we've played like 6 sessions. It's only come into effect once. It's like, it sort of feels like a waste of an edge, right? I would like a better, different edge. As long as this is the advance you're in, so your 3rd advance, 3rd level, you pick whatever edge, I don't know, trademark weapon, and then you decide after having it for a while that, you know what, trademark weapon it's not doing what I thought it would do. It probably wouldn't be that because trademark weapon's pretty simple. But you say, you know what, it's not doing what I thought it would do, and so I would really rather a different edge. As long as you haven't advanced again, and it's your previous advance or something, if it's the current advance you just took at this level, you can change it. Once you go on to the next level, the next advance, and you pick a different thing, like some skills, then the thing you had before is locked in, right? Because you've already had several sessions to try it out. You've used it, you haven't changed it, at that point you're locked in, right? So my idea here is just, you have some time to try these things out, and if it's just the current advanced thing, you're not doing a lot of retconning or anything because you just got this thing, you've only used it for a session or 2, it's fine. You tried it out, you thought it would be cool, it turns out not to be as cool as you thought. I don't mind if you then, if you pick a different edge, or say, you know what, I wanted to get this edge, but the edge actually relies on a couple skills that I'm not as good at as I realize. Can I go take the skills now, take the edge later? Yeah, I'd probably allow that, although I might say, well, just keep the edge and get the skills on your next advance. It's not that big of a deal. So yeah, I mean, I'll allow respecs in Savage Worlds if it's the current advance you're on, right? So if you don't like the way the thing you picked right now works, before we go to the next level, you can change it. Once we advance up, then you're keeping it. So that's Savage Worlds. Let's talk to our contact. And we got another mission, but before we do that, I actually think we need to sell some stuff. So let's head back to the base. So now the question becomes, all right, so what about champions? Champions is a completely free form game. Oh, being ambushed. Okay, hang on, let me land so I don't get so I have my Mesmer defense in case somebody comes along to try to mes me. I don't know who else is going to ambush me. This guy might be the only one because the other guy might not be able to fly. If it's a vampire or something, I don't know if he can get up here. So I should go down and see who's down there and clean this off. So Champions is a completely freeform game. I don't see anybody else. Okay. Champions is a completely freeform game. You buy your powers one at a time by points, and when you gain XP, you gain more powers. So with Champions, I would say, first of all, I'm going to be very, very, very microscopic in examining what you want to do, because I've seen too much ridiculous level of power gaming from people, and I'm not going to let you move 5 points from this to this because it gains you 10 active points, even though it only costs you 5 real points. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let you drop your dex from a 24 to a 23 because you keep the 8 OCV and you want to save 3 points because it costs 3 points for a point of dex. I'm not going to, unless there's like, why are you getting slower or less dexterous? Because I want to save points is not an answer that I will accept. Okay, so I will sometimes allow minor adjustments in Champions, as long as it's not power gamey and as long as the justification for it out of character is that you maybe made a mistake. I am going to need a justification for it in character, right? Why don't you remember this skill you had? You know, why did you have this skill that you've used in combat and stuff and now you don't have it? Like, again, are we breaking continuity? Right? The thing with Champions, unlike D&D, right, and Savage Worlds, where in Dungeons and Dragons and Savage Worlds you get a very limited number of things that you can do, and they're limited by I don't have any orange. Okay, they're limited by what you could do per level, right? So like in Savage Worlds, you can only gain an attribute once every rank. Every 4 advances is a rank, so novice, heroic, etc. Veteran, legendary. So because of that, it makes some sense in D&D for you can't you only get like a feat every 4 levels maybe, and you really can't change your ability scores once they're set, and you really can't, sometimes you can't change your spells after you pick them depending on your class. And so let's just hang on here. I'm just trying to see what I need to sell. I don't have all that much of anything, but I should sell a few things. This way I don't get full up again. Oh, and I wanted to buy inspirations from her. That should be enough. We don't need to fill them all up because we'll get more. So yeah, I'll allow minor things if there's good reason both in character and out of character for it. But I am going to look at it with a fine-tooth comb under a microscope, etc., because I have too many experiences of people trying to change their character to power game them. Now, if you want something more, so what I was going to say is with D&D, you pick a subclass and you're stuck. You can't change it. But in Champions, if you buy something that you don't like, you can always buy a new power that you do like, you're not locked in, right? If you bought an energy blast in your multi-power and you decide you don't like that energy blast, you don't have to use that slot, and you can spend another 5 or 6 points to buy a new energy blast. You're not locked in, right? Whereas in D&D, if you go with a rogue assassin, you cannot spellcast. If you decide later that you want to spellcast, there's nothing you. I mean, you could multi-class, but within the assassin subclass, there's no spellcasting to it, right? If you later decide you want to do what the arcane trickster did, you can't add that. Whereas in champions, if you start out with a character who has no energy blast, and you later decide you want to get an energy blast, if you have a justification for it, like your character buys a gun or something, or like a laser beam weapon, or you've defeated a villain and you capture his laser gun and you say, I want to start using it, and I want to buy energy blast. If you have the points for it, there's nothing stopping you. It's a completely free-form game. There's nothing but me as your GM stopping you from doing that. The rules allow you to buy any power as long as you have the points. Unlike D&D, where you can't just pick any spell because you want it, right? It has to be on your spell list. You have to have the right subclass, etc., etc. And so if you don't choose the right subclasses, then you often end up being completely unable to do what you wanted to do. That doesn't happen in Champions, right? So I'm actually a little tougher about it in Champions because I know that you can just wait, be patient, gain XP, and do the thing you were talking about with your XP. You don't need to change stuff, right? So if there isn't a good reason why you're going to move the points from martial arts to energy blast, I'm going to say keep the martial arts, don't put any more XP into it, and save up some XP to buy yourself an energy blast later, and then your character will gain energy blast, right? So for the most part, if it's stuff like that, I'm probably not going to allow a respec. Now, there is an exception to this, and this is in Champions. This guy's going to be a pain too, isn't he? In Champions, there is a tradition, and it's in the rules, that if you want to do a major respec of your whole character, where you want to move a lot of points around, there is precedent in the comic books, like Red and Blue Superman. Look it up, it's really stupid, but it does exist in the comics. There is precedent in the comics for characters to completely and totally change, right? From the Green Hulk to the Gray Hulk. Or at one point, the Thing lost his thingness and just became Ben Grimm, and then eventually he got back to the Thing, right? These things happen in comics all the time, and as players, you're allowed to do this in Champions with something that is generically called, and it's where Terravolta came from, because the people who made COH built they used to play Champions, so that's why they built Terravolta. There's this thing in Champions called a radiation accident, right? And the idea is that in comics, they just sort of generically use the idea of radiation being able to, instead of killing you the way it probably normally would, or definitely normally would, it can change your superpowers. I hate fighting these guys in these narrow little hallways just because it's so hard to see everything, because they're so big. So, if somebody wants to make a major change to their character, I would potentially allow it under the auspices of a radiation accident. I'm going to still need to be sure that they're not power gaming, right? So I'm going to check what they want to change into. I'm going to need to know why, and we're going to have to, I might die here, let's see, put this on. And we're going to have to negotiate how it's going to work and when it's going to happen and that kind of thing. Jeez. I might have to fly out of here to get more inspirations if I have to fight another one of those guys, because the double boss is rough. It's mostly in this enclosed area. I can't get away from the werewolves. Right, and so they can just melee me to death. Anyway, so we have done it, and the one time that I remember a major radiation accident happening, well, the Bad Rob used to ask for him all the time, because he never, he would try to make, he's a power gamer who was bad at being a power gamer, so he would try to make He would try to make really powerful characters, and I'm going to probably have to be a chicken and run out of here. He would try to make really powerful characters, because I need more inspirations. He would try to make really powerful characters, and he would be bad at it, right? And so it wouldn't be as powerful as he wanted, so then he'd have to respec it. And then it still wouldn't be as powerful as he wanted, so he'd have to respec it again. And it, nope, wrong way. It still wouldn't be as powerful as he wanted, so he'd have to respec it again, and so on and so forth. And so, I went the wrong way. Here we go. And so he tried to do that a few times, and it was rotating GMs, and one of the other GMs would let him. But the one I remember that was very, very appropriate was this guy who he was new to Champions. So what happened is there was this like club in in our school, like a role-playing game club, and it was sort of like, I don't remember what it's called, Games of Strategy or something. And we started playing in school, and then eventually we played after school at my best friend's house. But the first couple of days we were playing in school, and it was my best friend and I, and the good Rob. We were teaching these other guys who were D&D players how to play Champions, right? And so this guy, Balendu, his family was Indian. He was with my best friend, and my best friend was teaching him how to play Champions and how to make up a character. And I don't know what my best friend was doing, because I wasn't there. I was on the other side of the room with two other guys. And what I decided to do to teach them was, what I decided to do is, instead of trying to teach them all the rules, I asked them, what do you want your character to do? Right? I always used to say you can do anything in Champions. I could build these Vampirian Champions with multi-form and energy blast and damage shield and strength and growth and density increase and all that kind of stuff, right? I could easily build a thing that went from a vampire to a werewolf, right? And it's super easy. I could do anything in Champions. And I always used to say that. So what I did was I asked them for qualitative things. What do you want your character to do? Well, I want my character to be a ninja with a sword. Okay, that sounds like martial arts and a hand-to-hand killing attack. So let me teach you about martial arts and hand-to-hand killing attacks, right? So what I did was I picked the powers for them based on what they said they wanted, and then I taught them what they needed to know as they put it on their character sheet. I explained it to them, and then, I said, you'll figure it out in gameplay. And that worked pretty well. I don't know what my best friend did with Balendu, whose character's name was Praetor, but Balendu ended up with this really awkward hodgepodge of character abilities. Like, I think he could go D-Solid. I don't know if he could go D-Solid. He had, like, an energy blast, no range effects D-Solid melee attack, which is, doable in Champions, but kind of weird, and I don't know why he had it. He had I-beams or something. I think he had a little bit of density increase, maybe not, that he could turn on. Not desolidification, now that I think about it. I think he had some running. He might have had a little bit of martial arts. And so it was this weird hodgepodge of, like, every power in the game. We used to call it the bag of points. And so, with this, like, it was a very strange character. And then, I don't remember what his disadvantages were. And Balendu roleplayed that his character was rich. And so he had these two, like a chauffeur named Jorge and a doorman named Raul, or maybe the chauffeur was Raul and the other one was Jorge. I don't remember. He had Jorge and Raul. I remember that. And Balendu made this up. It was just part of his role play. He was a great role player, and he's really funny. And so, so he played this character for a little while, and as he played him, he learned the rules of Champions, right? over time. And eventually, he bought the rule book, he read through the rule book, he learned all the rules, right? And what he realized was this character, this collection of bag of points method that he had made his character up with, it really hadn't left him with a character that he liked. It left him with a character that he was not entirely happy with, and he said he would like to make some changes, right? And he knew about radiation accidents, so he said, "Look, I really want to move all my points around and make a lot of changes. Can I have a radiation accident?" My best friend was GMing at the time, so he said, "Yeah, okay, right, that makes sense. Now that you know what the rules are, it makes sense that you might want to make some changes and create a better character that more completely fits your vision for that character, right?" These guys are brutal. You see why they said bring friends, because these things are tough. They're pretty much like elite bosses, because you're fighting two really tough bosses, highly resistant to our damage anyway, all at the same time. So it's pretty rough. And they do an awful lot of damage to you. Fortunately, I can knock them down. So my best friend said, "Yes, okay, we'll do a radiation accident." But Belendu then, he said, "We'll figure it out. Like we'll make a story. I'll do something." Right? So then Belendu started doing things like saying, "I go home and I'm going to take a swim in my radioactive swimming pool," and that sort of thing. It was sort of a joke. It was a joke, right? We turned it into a little. It was humorous. He was teasing, but he wanted his character to get hit with radiation because he knew that would cause the change, the transmogrification, I guess. And so, so eventually, my best friend had the doorman Jorge or Raul deliver a package. An anonymous package came to Praetor, and he opened it up, and it was this little green rock. I don't remember what it turned out to be, but I remember Belendu saying, "I'm going to take it and put it under my pillow and sleep with it under my pillow." And oh gosh, another one. Yeah, I need a whole tray of inspirations to beat those guys. So let's go this way. See if I can pick up some inspirations. And so, no, don't want to go that way. So eventually, the presence of that rock that he wasn't allowed to sleep with under. My best friend was like, "Come on, your character wouldn't sleep with that under his pillow," right? That you yourself as a player want to have a radiation accident, but your character would not want to irradiate himself. So no, you're not sleeping. So he put it in his closet, and he would take it down and look at it every once in a while. And I can't remember. I think it got delivered to him by one of his hunteds, and they were trying to kill him, and instead the radiation or whatever that they were trying to do to him, because it doesn't have to be actual radiation, it could be something else. But eventually the radiation or whatever transformed Praetor, and Belendu was allowed to make the character that he wanted, and he basically made him a martial artist with a crossbow and damage resistance, and most of the powers that he had started with were gone, right? And it was because I guess I don't know what happened, right? I don't know in particular why my best friend ended up making up this sort of character with him. I suspect what he did was he taught this guy how to play the game and basically explained how each power worked, and then the player picked powers he thought sounded cool but didn't really go together very well. And I think that might have been what happened. And I don't know if my best friend didn't realize these aren't the powers you're going to want, or maybe he just said, "I'll just let him pick what he wants because he thinks this is cool." I don't really know. Because again, I was on the other side of the room teaching the other guys doing it differently, just saying, "What do you want to do?" and then figuring out how to translate that into Champions terms. Those guys were a lot happier with their characters, but they didn't play with us as long. I mean, Belendu kept playing with us for years, and those guys only played with us for like 6 months and then stopped playing. So, and that may have just had to do with who was more interested in superheroes and who wasn't. But that's an example of a radiation accident that I think is perfectly reasonable because um, the player, the player who was helping create the character made a mistake, right? He didn't really help the new player figure out the right kind of character for what he wanted. And, it's hard in Champions. You just never know. There are lots of different ways you could classify something like an energy blast, right? It doesn't have to be an energy blast. It could be a ranged killing attack. It could be an energy blast with modifiers on it. There's no sacred number of points that you necessarily are going to have. I wish I could just stop being cornered by these giant tunes that are so big and makes it so hard to see everything. I hate the big ones just because of what it does to the user interface or to, just the user experience. I don't care about what it does, in terms of the damage to the character, but it degrades the user experience to me to have these giant mega bots that I can't really see properly in a small space. Right, in a big room where I can get an angle on it like this, it's okay, but so many of the spaces in COH are so much more cramped than this, and it pushes the camera forward, and then I can't see what I'm doing, and I don't like that. I really prefer smaller enemies. And one of the things that frustrates me a little bit, again, I love this game, but one of the things that frustrates me a little bit is the fact that when you get a faction that has one big avatar, you've got 1,000 big ones. Like, everybody you fight is big. Like the Devouring Earth. They're all gigantic and they go up to here. They're 3 or 4 times the height of my character. And in an office, hallway or something, it's just very awkward. Alright, I gotta defeat Ulir, but I've done everything else. Now, Ulir is on the other side of the base here. Do I dare take him without any heals? I don't think so. See if we can get some from beating these guys. So yeah, I mean, I think that respecking because the player didn't understand the game when they made their character is entirely valid. I think respecking because you've thought the character was going to be enjoyable and it's not is entirely valid as long as you're not trying to respec into a power gamed Uber build, right? That I'm going to put my foot down and say no. I don't allow power gamed Uber builds. Right, and as a GM of many years playing Champions and running games, and having been around power gamers, both good and bad, both good at it and bad at it, my power game detection, excuse me, I just sneezed. My power game detection radar is quite good, and I will stop that. I don't permit that. So, but Belendu wasn't power gaming. He was trying to realize the character that he really wanted, right? He wanted more of a martial arts type character, but I don't think he realized the martial arts skill existed, right? So he said he wanted to do melee damage and maybe be really good at hitting people and maybe be able to hit people that other people couldn't hit, right? Or something like that. And so my best friend was like, oh, well, you can't hit D-solid people, so let's give you a fixed D-solid. And you want to have a really powerful punch, so let's give you an energy blast, no range, so you can punch people and do energy damage. And let's make your character strong, so you can do some strength damage. And let's give your character some density increase to give you some defenses. And so it encapsulated everything he said, but again, there are lots of ways to do things in Champions. And so what Belendu saw, he played in our group that had the good Rob with the character Assaulter, who had a really powerful throwing star and really good martial arts. And I think he saw Is that Ulir? No, that's just a boss. He saw Rob's character, Assaulter. Oh, this is going to be rough. Let's see if we can get Ulir instead. Although Ulir's an elite boss, right? Alright, let me take this guy out, and then I'm going to have to go buy more inspirations. So he may have seen what Assaulter was like and said, what's he doing? And looked on the character sheet and said, oh, what is this martial arts thing? I didn't even know about that, right? And maybe the way he described, again, I don't know, but maybe the way he described his attacks, what he wanted to do to my best friend, sounded more like no range energy blast, punch, density increase, but what he really wanted was high PDED and martial arts, right? But he didn't know enough to ask for that because he didn't know how the game worked, right? And so, I'm perfectly fine with a complete respec radiation accident as long as it's not for power gaming reasons, right? And this wasn't a power game situation. Come on. Man, these guys are hard to fight just because they are so resistant. And all that, and he's still got like 80% of his health. So yeah, go ahead and comment if you haven't already. What are your rules as a GM for allowing power gaming? Do you care about continuity the way I do, or maybe you don't care about respecs relative to retcons? If you're a player, what reasons have you had for wanting to redo your character, and how much of it would you expect to be allowed to respec? Would you want the whole thing? Would you want to do something like a radiation accident? Or are you more likely to ask for a more targeted, limited type of a respec? Let us know in the comments. Alright, I'm going to pause it here, guys. I'm going to go out and get new inspirations, and then I will bring you back when we face Ulir. Alright, guys, we're back. I've gotten some big inspirations from the base. There's Ulir. Okay, so we're ready to go. We'll start with this guy. Yeah, so ultimately what I would say is, when in doubt, follow the Champion's rulebook. Well, the Champion's rulebook always says about things like radiation accidents, which we call respecs, is it has to be good justification from the player. They have to justify within character, logic, why this would be the case, and they have to justify it to you as a player in terms of how the points are going to work in terms of, like, is this a fair, balanced character that fits with the rest of the characters, that's not overpowered, that's not going to trivialize combat, and that kind of thing, right? So it has to be, like, mechanically balanced and justified within the rules, but it also needs to be conceptually justified for the character, right? And then obviously if you have this consideration that we had with the Praetor's player, which is that he was oh, we leveled up. That is going to really help. Wow, that was a lot of XP from killing all those purple guys. Yeah, they're not going to be able to do anything to me now because I'm on my level up buff. So that's good. Alright, we've maxed out our resistances to 70% or whatever, and we're maxed out our damage, we've maxed out our accuracy. Now that's all going to start fading shortly. As soon as it does, we're going to need to put the other inspirations on. Yep, they're fading. Let's cover them. And that's it. And we completed the story arc. So guys, post your stories about respecs if you have any, and let us know. Let us know what conditions under which you might ask for a respec, and what conditions, if you're a GM, under which you would allow respecs. I'm going to try to get out of here, which always takes me way too long because I can never remember. I hate mazes. I like mazes on paper. I hate them in a D&D game. This in a computer game, because I can never remember where I was versus the top-down view on a sheet of paper. I have books of mazes. I remember when I was a kid, I had a monster. It was called a monster maze book. So you had like Godzilla and Mothra and Wolfman and Dracula and Frankenstein's monster and I don't know what else, King Kong, and they were just little silhouettes, and they turned their silhouettes into mazes. And I had a lot of fun with that. I like mazes normally, but I don't like them in role-playing games. And especially with this kind of thing where there's no good reason for Paris Park to be a maze except that they wanted it to be a maze. Right? Like there's no good reason why the forest in the middle of a city park would be maze-like like that. It's just that Statesman thinks role-playing games should all have mazes in them, so he put them in. And then there are several other places that are maze-like as well, and I'm not really actually a fan of any of that. But that's alright. The game's great mostly, it's just a few things that irritate me. Alright, so we're going to level up with Ms. Liberty, and we get 3 more slots, and I have to think about this. Oh, we wanted Charged Shield, right? Charged Shield gives us regen. It doesn't give us endurance, but it does give us regen. And of course, Power Surge is going to give us more resistance, so we're going to want to put slots on that. I don't know that we need them on. We probably eventually need them on Power Sync as well. I'm going to give another one on Charged Shield. And you know, I think I'm going to finish Cloud Bursts. This way that one's 6 slotted. Because then when we get our next merit-based set, who knows when that'll be, or if we get a different set, we'll be able to put a set on that. But in the meantime, let's go see what enhancements we have. We can go up to level 40. Let's see what enhancements we have that we can put on our character. 39th level, guys. We're going to be 40th level in the very next level up. Let's see what we've got. So what do we need? Hang on. We need 2 damages and a heal. So we have 1 damage and no heals of our level. Let's see if we have anything that we can make. Let's get rid of missing ingredients. We don't have... Let's get rid of that. We don't have any of it there. Okay, so we're just going to have to wait. We got an extra damage, so we'll throw that in, which is going to raise our damage from 168 to 216 on this power. We use a lot, so we may as well have that. Okay, so 1 more level to level 40, and then 41 that'll be more slots, and then 41 will be our next power. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes.